Should the protection of children come at the expense of restrictions of freedom of expression? That's the question that Quebec judges had to answer in the 1989 case, R v. Irwin Toys, a case that set a precedent for how Canadian charter rights would be dealt with in the future. Irwin Toys was a massive toys company, but in the late 1980s, Irwin Toys' adverts were struck down by Quebec's ban on children's advertising in media, also known as the Consumer Protection Act, and was charged with 188 violations under this act. The Quebec Consumer Protection Act was a series or set of legislation advertisers were to follow, and in this case, under Section 248, the act reads as follows. No person may make use of commercial advertising directed at persons under 13 years of age. This section was primarily focused on TV ads. Irwin Toys declared this ban in court, arguing that it violated the Quebec Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms under Section 2B, which stated, everyone has the fundamental freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, including freedom of the press and other media of communication. The Superior Court of Montreal dismissed this case, and Irwin Toys appealed this case thereafter. This appeal was to determine if the act did in fact violate the charter, and the decision was made through the trials and questions of the Oakes test. It was decided by a majority of 3-2 and the Oakes test that the act did not impair or infringe upon Irwin Toys' charter right of freedom of speech or freedom of advertising. So, how do people feel about this ban? Well, for starters, the Quebec government wanted to protect children from the manipulation of advertisers through ideological perspectives, portraying a person acting improper and imprudently, showcasing and advertising drugs or substances, and more by introducing this bill. It was meant to serve as comfort for parents who had young children watching television all day. Parents and advocacy groups across the border had been actively criticizing channels and shows on TV. Many ideas were most likely shared with parents all across Canada as well, given that many American shows were also being broadcast in and across Canada. Nights and weekends were the prime time for advertisers to appeal to children, as they were home all day and had nothing to do. These parents and groups were most majorly concerned with the content of these advertisements and how often they were being screened to children on the regular, with some ads involving violence and graphic images parents felt weren't suitable for kids. Meanwhile, Irwin Toys found the ban as a threat or danger to the company. They'd sold toys all around Quebec, which is why they decided to fight back. They found that advertising to older audiences over the age of 13 wasn't as successful as the advertising catered to younger audiences. Surprisingly enough, the ban had little impact on sales. Rather, it was the combination of the ban and slow decline of interest in consumers that impacted the company the most. Irwin Toys experienced many ups and downs in profit, and was eventually sold to new owners in 2001, which ended in bankruptcy. And now you might be asking, what happened after the case? Did any laws change? Did people's views shift? A few years after the case, the article was published in April of 1995. The CRTC, or better known as the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, was to hold a hearing or meeting that would invite educators and parents to find a balance between child safety in consuming media and freedom of expression. Many parents wanted to censor graphic and violent shows that they felt were unsuitable for children to consume, such as the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, a popular show for children at the time. As of then, they had a set of regulations shows had to follow in order for them to run on Canadian television. However, the regulations often meant that shows were just to be in a gray area. Some shows would be completely blacklisted out of children's media, while some would just be edited. Today, kids and teens are surrounded by tech, and advertisements disguised as content on online platforms. These platforms are addictive in terms of content and use, and are often the playing grounds for, quote, eating disorders, depression, sexual exploitation, and more, end quote, says Justin Ling of the Toronto Star. There are ads and videos on these platforms that show popular figures and celebrities placing bets, appearing in gambling ads, showcasing inappropriate objects, and more. While many social media platforms are designed for teens ages 13 and up, there's no regulation or verification check happening on these platforms. making it all the more dangerous for young kids and teenagers to have the ability to view these ads. Even today, Canadian courts haven't made it clear whether or not tech companies or social media platforms in general should be held liable for the harm they cause to society, especially towards children. Which raises the question, should tech companies be held accountable for the actions of its users? So, in the end, did the legal system achieve justice with this case? With all our findings, it was clear that the legal system presented justice with a case that was mildly controversial. Judges were split nearly half and half on the fairness and concerns the Consumer Protection Act presented itself with, and it was a battle between parents and companies that had to make a profit. As for me, I firmly believe that the legal system did achieve justice. You might believe that if this ban wasn't imposed, they might have had a chance to live and continue on selling toys to children of all ages. However, we talked about how Irwin Toys' sales were declining with the loss of interest in physical toys in the later 1990s. Even without the ban, Irwin Toys would have struggled to stay afloat just by selling physical toys either way. The way I see it, the Court of Montreal simply upheld a reasonable TV restriction and act for the safety of young citizens by redirecting, not controlling, the way media presented itself to people. Thanks for watching our video. If you liked this, check out our other videos on our page.